I, like many of my fellow program assistants, had a lot of trouble writing this speech. Part of that is that every single day, I had moments of clarity for why I am here. I'm surrounded in this room by political change makers and believers, and that has reached its peak in the past few days here. The other part of it is that if you had asked me 10 years ago if I envisioned myself working with American politicians and policymakers, I would have shook my head fiercely. And if I'm being completely honest, if you had asked me 2 years ago, I probably would have just laughed. It's been a rocky road between me and politics. It began when I was in the first grade. It was my second year in a classroom full of fellow American students, having just moved to Baltimore only a year prior from East Jerusalem, a neighborhood called Beit Hanina, where I spent ages 0 through 4. During an activity about our families, I declared gleefully to my class that I had been born in Palestine. "No, you weren't," said a classmate of mine. "Palestine doesn't exist." It really was an innocent mistake. An indignant conversation between two 6-year-olds ensued, followed by the pulling out of the classroom globe, where my classmate and my teacher were both able to point defiantly at my birth city, only to prove that Palestine was indeed not on that map. I went home in shambles and very embarrassed. Suddenly, I was overtly aware of this concept of politics and political divides and the political scope of the world, and came to the horrifying realization that I was accidentally embodying all of these. Of course, my parents had told me of the complexities of the situation in the region, but until this very wise age of 6, it had not stuck. This intersection between my identity and politics felt confusing, isolating, and divisive. It had made both me and my classmate upset, and I wanted nothing to do with it. Fast forward to 4th grade, when my family moved to Jakarta, Indonesia. Attending an international school, my few American classmates there were different and exciting. Most of their parents worked for the American Embassy or gas and oil companies, as opposed to my dad, who worked for a faith-based relief organization. But boiled down, and we found this out pretty quickly, our only real difference was that I did not know the Pledge of Allegiance. They told me, "You aren't really American until you know the Pledge of Allegiance." But don't worry, they made me flashcards. And I went home at the end of the day and recited by memory the Pledge of Allegiance to my mother. It ended up being a bittersweet moment. What I had wanted to be a proud exclamation turned into a teaching moment for my mother, who explained that pledging to an inanimate flag could be risky. Much better to engage in dialogue with the people of the Republic. Now, as you can imagine, that was way too much nuance for me. And my 8-year-old self rolled her eyes and wondered aloud, "Well, can't you just be excited for me?" It was within that month that 9/11 happened. The American Embassy evacuated my friends and their families back to the United States. School was canceled until reactions calmed about President Bush's war declarations and comments about Islam. When we did go back to school, our class was trained that when we were on school trips, we should say that we were from Jakarta International School instead of the country that we hailed from. Now, as far as I was concerned, all was calm in my neck of the woods. It was the US politicians that were causing all of this ruckus, and I knew I did not like what they were saying. I was constantly being asked what I thought about what my country was doing, and what my country was saying, and how my country was reacting. Now, I can't have been more than 10 when I declared to my dad, "I am not proud to be American." Now, he got very quiet, as is the Quaker way. And as I reflect on this moment, I imagine he was simultaneously choosing his words very carefully and wondering what living abroad had inadvertently done to his children's psyches. I don't remember his words exactly, so don't fact check this. But what I remember is him saying, There are a lot of things to be proud of being an American. There are a lot of things that you can want to change and can change, but you should never be embarrassed to call yourself an American. You are American, and you can work towards making that something you can be proud of. And my 10-year-old self rolled her eyes and said, "Yeah, whatever, Dad." But until writing this speech, I didn't realize how much that message had stuck with me. It stuck with me when I returned to the United States and to a Quaker high school. It stuck with me when I learned uncut American history in a class entitled From Hiroshima to 9/11. I later learned about religion and social change movements. It was in the back of my mind as I chose my college and my majors. But I still didn't really want to work with politics. I still didn't really want to work with these politician people. But when I studied abroad in Jordan, a seed was planted, and I can only describe this as maybe a leading. That maybe I actually wanted, but maybe I actually needed to work directly with American government. I was sitting at my host family's kitchen table researching candidates for the 2012 election. My incredulous 11-year-old host sister came up to me and asked, among a zillion other questions, "But how do you know they aren't just lying so that you elect them and then they get a lot of money and then you've wasted your time?" I paused. The bluntness of this question quenched my own skepticism that I was feeling at that very moment. I was studying abroad in the eye of the stormy Arab Spring, in a region that cannot afford to take democracy for granted, and was not taking it for granted. I was talking to a person the same age that I had been when I declared my own frustration with politics and identity and what is all of this? And something clicked. I do have a voice in the American system, and it goes far beyond my vote. But that is a worthless statement unless I actually remember that, apply it, and seize the opportunity to enact change. So here I am. And I'm sure that there are many people in this room who understand how easy it is to feel dejected by the state of the world, and particularly the state of the country that we are living in and its actions. But what I am finding is that organizations like FCNL refuse to feed into that dejection. FCNL, thankfully, is so unlike my 6-year-old self, who bought that politics are confusing, divisive, and isolating. I have found instead that we delve into the intricacies, we talk across partisan lines, and we revel in the opportunity to collaborate, and we make a point of it. This is what politics and governance should be, and that is why I'm here, working with and for all of us here. And for my dad, who was a program assistant in 1977 and is here in the audience, I want to reassure you that I feel a little prouder to be American here, as I'm surrounded by political changemakers and believers and learning how to act with hope.